Dear Naruto Lemon fans, I'm thrilled to invite all of you to my Boosty channel, where you can enjoy exclusive Naruto Lemon scenes in a comfortable and supportive community. Choose from various subscription tiers, from Mini Lemon to God Lemon, and gain access to unique content tailored just for our fans. Plus, subscribers to over Naruto Lemon and God Lemon will receive special mentions in my videos. Support my channel and dive deeper into the world of Naruto today. Dare. Sasuke. This isn't good. Silence. Terrible, terrible silence. Azure eyes stared intently at the creature that hovered just a few feet off the ground. A beautiful creature that only the ancient primordials could create. A woman. No. No, no, no. She wasn't a woman. Sasuke. Sasuke. Hey. Answer me. Naruto. Shut up. The now-named Naruto silently gritted his teeth at the restrained tone of his best friend. He didn't want to tear his gaze away from the goddess standing before him, but he was aware of the inner turmoil swirling within Sasuke. He wasn't sure either. Naruto had to physically restrain his hands from shaking as the pale-skinned woman finally moved. Her white locks swayed gracefully as she sharply turned her head in their direction. And she stared. Before finally, Tenji. The pale-skinned goddess asked quietly, a hint of sadness. Naruto belatedly realized the woman was looking directly at him, not Sasuke. His spine tingled and his fingers twitched nervously at the presence of this woman imposing her will upon him. Naruto swallowed nervously as the woman's eyes narrowed in sadness, and a sorrowful expression appeared on her face. Her tiny eyebrows drew together, and her eyes glistened. Who was Tenji? Even now. You stand defiant. That expression of sadness slowly faded, giving way to a sullen one. I did what I thought was right. And yet you still judge me like this. Naruto swallowed nervously again, glancing at Sasuke, who was anxiously clutching his kusanagi. Before Naruto could speak, he was interrupted by another. That's not TNJ-. The being was forced to silence as the pale-skinned goddess flared her chakra. The world felt the woman's power spread throughout it, consuming it whole and drowning it in a pit of despair. Naruto felt his heart clench painfully, and he had to resist the urge to fall to his knees. What is this? Madara Uchiha wasn't even that powerful. This woman was on a whole other level. Silence. She whispered venomously as her eyes moved to the droplet of black chakra. The veins around her eyes became pronounced as she stared at Zetsu. He is Tenji. Wielding the power of my sons. She continued after a moment of silence. I will never forget those eyes. She finished darkly. Naruto swallowed his anxiety before quietly exhaling. He began to slowly control his breathing, pushing away all the negative emotions emanating from the goddess. Calming himself, he placed a hand on Sasuke's shoulder and began channeling his chakra through his friend, calming him as well. The blonde-haired teenager nodded to his friend, who returned the gesture with his own nod. He slowly turned his attention back to the hovering goddess before pulling on his ruined mesh shirt. The material barely hung on his torso and was riddled with holes and rips. His orange pants were torn and disfigured by several rips at the thighs, covering only the lower part of his knees. Looking at Sasuke, he nodded before flaring his own chakra. A golden shroud of chakra erupted around his body, surrounding him with an ethereal glow that could rival that of the sun. A peaceful aura settled in the area as Naruto's chakra repelled the onslaught of oppressive and negative emotions emanating from Kaguya. His presence, so bright and loving, stood in stark contrast to the presence Kaguya exuded. 7 pitch-black orbs slowly materialized behind Naruto before swirling in a hypnotic pattern. One of the orbs slowly left its synchronized formation before hovering above Naruto's hand. The good Adama began to transform and completely change shape, transforming into a slender staff and spinning rapidly. Naruto glanced at the object before grabbing the weapon and spinning it in his hand. He exhaled one last time before looking directly into the goddess's eyes. I don't know who Tenji is, but he sounds like someone important to you. The woman didn't respond to the statement, opting to look at the one she believed to be her reborn lover. Naruto glanced at his best friend, giving him a glare and a quiet nod. An unspoken conversation took place, and Sasuke loosened his grip on his Kusanagi. The golden-haired teenager rested his staff on his shoulder before speaking again. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Super Grandpa spoke of you. He said you were an emotionless monster. Naruto noticed the change in emotion instantly. Her grim expression remained, but Naruto could sense the anger lurking beneath it. The woman began to slowly lower herself, but her gaze never once strayed from Naruto. But that's not true, is it? He asked rhetorically, his eyes hard. She didn't answer. I sense too much emotion coming from you. Sadness, anger, regret. He frowned, continuing to speak. Unlike Madara, you actually understand what you're doing. Kaguya was silent for what felt like hours before she bowed her head. You even sound like him. A terrible silence followed her statement, and her next action surprised even Naruto himself. I won't make the same mistake twice. Naruto's unique eyes widened to an impossible degree as the pale-skinned woman appeared before him. What? When did she move? He would never get an answer. Naruto. Naruto heard Sasuke scream before a black cone surrounded his vision, cutting off all light and depriving him of all senses. I will correct the mistake you made. After I cleanse this world, we will be together again, Tenji. I promise you. Naruto heard Kaguya's voice, but he couldn't place it. Everywhere he looked, everything was black. Black. Hatred. Sadness. Loneliness. Anger. Rage. All the emotions he had overcome during his rigorous training to become a sage hit him with a force that resembled one of Tsunade's powerful blows. These weren't his emotions. Naruto closed his eyes, maybe, and began to focus on the turmoil boiling inside Kaguya. Normally, he would be freaking out and screaming about how unfair life was, but now wasn't the time. He could still think, and while he wasn't entirely sure what was happening, he assumed he was in Kaguya's subconscious, or at least some part of it. He knew he was cut off from the outside world somehow, but he could still think. And that was all he needed. Okay. Think. 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 Was he even thinking? Idiot. He began to channel his chakra, his breathing slowing. His hands slowly clasped together, and he bowed his head down. He needed to calm down. Sasuke was relying on him. Like the rest of the world. That's the worry. Inhale. Exhale. I'll be surprised if you can get out of this hole. Naruto ignored his partner's voice and tried to sense his surroundings. He got absolutely nothing, and it was only slightly annoying. Good. So it won't work. Inhale. Exhale. His blonde locks twitched as he tilted his head. Inhale. Exhale. Her emotions. Naruto flared his chakra, at least believing it was possible, and latched onto Kaguya's emotions. He sifted through the waves of negative emotions effortlessly and stumbled upon something unique. He couldn't describe what he felt due to the lack of actual feelings, but if he could, he would compare it to a ribbon. A ribbon attached to another ribbon and vice versa. Inhale. Inhale. Exhale. Naruto exhaled quietly before tugging on the ribbon. Nothing. Well then. It wasn't him. A bright flash of white light exploded in front of his face. His eyes instinctively closed at the action. There was silence for a few moments before he heard a familiar voice, though this time it wasn't filled with sadness, but anger. Ishiki. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, hearing the woman's exclamation before tilting his head with a puzzled expression. He blinked several times in confusion as he watched the scene play out before him. Was this a memory? A completely different Kaguya glared at another pale-skinned man with hatred. The man's face was shrouded in darkness, but Naruto could make out a single horn that wrapped around the man's head, starting from his right ear and curling behind his head. He wore an incredibly high kimono collar that was open at the chest, revealing his pale skin and toned physique. His kimono was white and had no pattern on the front. Princess Kaguya. So frail and pathetic. Ishiki mocked cruelly. Still running from Momoshiki, huh? Ha ha ha. Kaguya's gaze turned vicious, but she didn't challenge the man. How did you find me? The pale-skinned man slowly walked around Kaguya. This action made the woman tremble with fear. How? Easy. You're terrible at covering your tracks. He snorted loudly before placing his fingers on the woman's shoulder. Momoshiki asked, so I can deliver you to him. Ishiki ignored the woman's horrified expression as his hand gripped her shoulder painfully. But his eyes met hers, and a pained smile appeared on his face. I enjoy watching you suffer like the parasite you are. So, go. Run. Run like your life depends on it. He let go of the woman's shoulder before roughly pushing her away. Run, little Kaguya, run. The woman wasted no time and immediately ran as fast as she could. Her form was blurry even to Naruto, and he had to strain his eyes to keep her in sight. Several seconds passed in silence before the pale-skinned man laughed loudly. Oh, Momoshiki. You really ruined everything, didn't you? Urashiki will not be pleased. After his statement, the man seemed to simply disintegrate into nothingness. His form turned to dust and soot, his presence vanished. Ishiki? Momoshiki? Urashiki? There were more of those creatures. The creatures that scared Kaguya? Naruto squeezed his eyes shut and gripped his hair tightly, trying to stop the oncoming nervous breakdown. If they dealt with Kaguya, and that was a big if, then they would have to deal with 3 more people just like Kaguya. What the hell? Was this some kind of stupid joke? Naruto yelped in surprise as another bright flash of white exploded in front of him. He crossed his arms in front of his face, protecting himself from the bright attack on his vision. Once the light faded, he slowly lowered his arms and tilted his head with a curious expression. Do you really have to leave, Tenji-kun? Naruto's eyes widened as he stared at the fair-skinned man named Tenji. He had black hair and wore it in an unusual style. He wore a straw headband that wrapped around his forehead and a necklace with the Magatama medallion. Tenji smiled softly, turning to face his lover before speaking. I must, my love. These peace talks are necessary. Kaguya sighed softly as her gaze slid across the floor. The country of Togo are barbarians. They see no reason and think only of violence. Gentle hands rested on Kaguya's as the man knelt before his lover. We will never know unless we try, Kaguya-chan. Don't you want peace? Her white eyes stared at his for a few seconds before shyly looking away. She nodded her head before speaking softly. Of course. But at the risk of your life? What if you are killed? Tenji gently rubbed his lover's hands before smiling again, so bright and loving. Then it is a risk I take for what I believe in. I will find peace. Do you know why, my love? A small smile appeared on Kaguya's face as her eyes slowly lifted and focused on him. Because you never go back on your word. The man nodded with a smirk before closing his eyes and slowly leaning towards his beloved. His lips gently pressed against Kaguya's as she pulled his body to hers. Naruto watched the scene unfolding before him with mixed emotions. He was aware of the strange similarities he and the man named Tenji shared. Never went back on his word? Check. Wanted peace? Check. Willing to put his life on the line for his people and his home? Check. Willing to talk to his enemies to achieve peace? Check. Now he understood, to some extent, why Kaguya had called him Tenji. But she didn't really know him. How had she systematically broken him with just a single glance? How could she have known of the similarities he shared with her late lover? It made no sense. I will never forget those eyes, that. Auntie Tsunade said the eyes were the window to the soul. So maybe, she saw his soul? That was. Before he could consider the idea further, another flash of light erupted before him. This time, she didn't disturb Naruto, and he endured the bright light. Once the bright light faded, a heavy scowl formed on Naruto's face. Why did you betray me, Tenji? Kaguya now resembled the form he first saw her in when she took over Madara's body. Why? Why did you do this? Was the world more important than your love? I loved you. I put you first. Above everything. She screamed hoarsely, tears streaming down her face. They attacked me, and you're punishing me? 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 After everything I've done for you. Her tears streamed down her chin and collected on Tenji's face. His body was still and motionless, and his gaze was completely empty. Kaguya grabbed the man's wrist before placing it on her stomach and crying loudly. Why you made me do this, Tenji? Why you feel them? Your children. You would kill your pregnant lover. She screamed at the heavens for several minutes, while the rain slowly descended from the sky. Naruto's eyes narrowed sadly as he looked at Kaguya, feeling every single emotion. It attacked his heart and buried itself deep in his chest. He didn't even notice the tears that slowly rolled down his cheeks. Why was this affecting him so much? He didn't even know Kaguya existed and only found out a couple of hours before the battle with Madara. Why did this bother him? Why was he so invested in her life now? Seeing some of her most intimate and important memories deep in her mind. Was that the reason? Perhaps. Naruto began wiping his eyes and slowly approached Kaguya. Her forehead rested on his chest, and she sobbed pitifully. In a way he wouldn't have expected from such a powerful person. It made him realize that she wasn't so different from humans. That she had emotions, and that she felt them just as sharply as everyone else. Her suffering was no less severe than anyone else's. She felt them. And she was in pain. But, the way Hagoromo spoke of her portrayed her as some kind of evil monster, incapable of rational explanation. Naruto simply couldn't see it. The details Super Grandpa had left him painted a very vivid picture of the woman Kaguya must have been. An emotionless shell of her former self, hell-bent on destroying the world by subjugating the population and reclaiming chakra as her own. But, that wasn't something he could feel. She was a broken woman. Shaped by the harsh and merciless reality that unfolded before her. Even now, watching that scene with her late lover was a painful reminder that negative experiences shape who you become as a person. Your ideals can change in an instant, and you won't even notice the change. Naruto could understand Kaguya. He sympathized with her, of course. But he sympathized with everyone. That was just the way he was. He always saw the good in people. It wasn't that he didn't ignore the evil in people, but he didn't want to be the kind of person who judged others based on a single action. Everyone was capable of evil in this world. Everyone. Even he was capable of it. Learning that Aunt Tsunade had died during Nagato's first attack had nearly broken him. His heart still ached to this day, and he doubted it would ever truly go away. He wanted to truly kill Nagato. To make the man pay for hurting one of the most important people in his life. And he almost He grabbed the man by the throat and would have broken him if not for Conan. She begged and begged. In that moment, it only angered him even more. Why was this woman begging for this monster's life? Hadn't she just witnessed him kill thousands of innocents? Without any remorse. And she was willing to beg and beg for his life? His hand was stayed by the teachings Jiraiya had given him. Killing for revenge will never bring back what you've lost. Aunt Tsunade wouldn't have wanted him to see him like this. She knew him better than anyone. The mother he never had. Naruto slowly sank to his knees and placed his hands on his hips. He stared at the sobbing Kaguya for several long minutes before slowly raising his hand and reaching out to her. His hand didn't touch her body, but simply floated through her. A slight frown crossed his face as he removed his hand from the goddess. I swear to you, Tenji. The woman spoke softly through muffled sobs. I will do everything in my power to make this world a better place. She sniffled softly before kissing the man tenderly on the lips. When she raised her head, she seemed to be looking directly at Naruto. As if she could somehow see him. Naruto met her gaze and could physically see the change taking place. It was an experience that changed who Kaguya was as a person. It turned her into the monster Hagoromo considered her. But Naruto knew better. He disagreed with her methods because they were inhumane, but he understood her. Understood why she did it. Understood the lengths she had gone to, and would ultimately go to, for her goal. Another flash of white light exploded around his form, and Naruto closed his eyes. He was silent for a few moments before slowly removing his hands from his face. His azure orbs traveled through his surroundings with a slight awe. Rainbow lights shone brightly in the emptiness of space. There were no discernible shapes or landmarks, but beautiful colors cascaded around him. He slowly rose to his feet, taking in this vast amount of empty space. There were no discernible shapes or landmarks, but beautiful colors cascaded around him. He slowly rose to his feet, taking in this vast amount of empty space. You understand me? Naruto's eyes widened as he turned to come face to face with Kaguya. The horned goddess was a few feet away, looking at him with half-lidded eyes. Naruto was silent for a few moments, realizing that this wasn't a memory. This was reality now. He licked his lips quietly before answering. Yes. I agree. Kaguya took one step forward. But you don't agree. Naruto slowly shook his head, frowning slightly. No, I don't. This isn't the way. Kaguya took another step forward. If you understand, then you know this is the only way. A stern expression began to form on his face as he crossed his arms over his chest. No, Kaguya. It's not like that. You've abandoned your humanity. She took another step forward, slowly closing the distance between them. I was never human to begin with. Naruto shook his head, unfazed by the fact. It didn't matter whether she was human or not, she had emotions and was capable of reason. You don't need to be human to know right from wrong. Kaguya, you know this is wrong. Kaguya's head shook slowly, causing her long locks to sway from side to side. Her eyes closed, and a sad smile appeared on her face. She took another step forward. I know this is wrong. But this is the path I have already chosen. Naruto frowned deeply as he replied. You can change, Kaguya. You cannot make the world a better place this way. You take away the freedom we have. This is not peace. This is subjugation. Her sad smile faltered for a moment, and her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Her head shook as she took another step toward Naruto, now standing at arm's length. Tears slowly streamed down her face, and an aura of indescribable sadness emanated from her. It struck Naruto, who withstood the harsh emotions without strain. How else can I save a world consumed by hatred and death? The goddess asked rhetorically, not expecting an answer. This time Naruto took a step toward Kaguya, his taller frame slightly towering over the horned goddess. His hand reached out to the woman, a gentle smile appearing on his face. Through love and understanding. He responded softly, with a smile so bright it literally lit up the world around them, changing the surrounding colors to warm shades of red and orange. Kaguya's eyes wandered across the empty space as Naruto's presence began to wash away her negative emotions. His bright and loving aura settled around her, slowly washing away all her fears and doubts. A pained expression appeared on Kaguya's face as she faltered. She took a half step back from the 17-year-old. I can't. And no. Humanity is poison. Naruto's expression didn't change at all as he took a full step towards Kaguya. He now stood directly in front of her, mere centimeters between them. Do you truly believe this, Kaguya? Or is that the pain talking? Naruto's aura crashed into Kaguya with the weight of 1,000 suns and showed no signs of stopping. Her will wavered for a brief moment as she basked in the calming aura of his chakra. Tears slowly streamed down her beautiful face as she stared into his azure pupils. Her face scrunched up in pain as she whispered in a pitiful tone, desperately trying to escape his intoxicating aura. And no. Stop. Please. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly, and his smile softened. His arms slowly wrapped around her body, ignoring her pitiful attempts to escape. Trust me, Kaguya. I know it's scary, but believe me when I say this. I can change this world, and I will. He squeezed her tightly and noticed that she stopped struggling in his grip. Do you know why I won't give in? Kaguya didn't answer, but tears streamed down her face. She squeezed her eyes shut, burying her face in Naruto's chest, knowing exactly what he was about to say. Because I never go back on my word. After those words, the world around her seemed to simply fall apart. The colors slowly began to fade and disintegrate, and a gigantic flash of white light exploded around Kaguya and Naruto. Her will wavered for a brief moment as she basked in the calming aura of his chakra. Tears slowly streamed down her beautiful face as she stared into his azure pupils. Her face twisted in pain as she whispered pitifully, desperately trying to escape his intoxicating aura. And no. Stop. Please. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly, and his smile softened. His arms slowly wrapped around her body, ignoring her pitiful attempts to escape. Trust me, Kaguya. I know it's scary, but believe me when I say this. I can change this world, and I will. He squeezed her tightly and noticed that she stopped resisting his hold. Do you know why I won't give in? Kaguya didn't answer, and tears streamed down her face. She squeezed her eyes shut, burying her face in the boy's chest, knowing exactly what he was about to say. Because I never go back on my word. After those words, the world around her seemed to simply fall apart. The colors slowly began to fade and disintegrate, and a gigantic flash of white light exploded around Kaguya and Naruto. Her will wavered for a brief moment as she basked in the calming aura of his chakra. Tears slowly streamed down her beautiful face as she stared into his azure pupils. Her face twisted in pain as she whispered pitifully, desperately trying to escape his intoxicating aura. And no. Stop. Please. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly, and his smile softened. His arms slowly wrapped around her body, ignoring her pitiful attempts to escape. Trust me, Kaguya. I know it's scary, but believe me when I say this. I can change this world, and I will. He squeezed her tightly and noticed that she stopped resisting his hold. Do you know why I won't give in? Kaguya didn't answer, and tears streamed down her face. She squeezed her eyes shut, burying her face in the boy's chest, knowing exactly what he was about to say. Because I never go back on my word. After those words, the world around her seemed to simply fall apart. The colors slowly began to fade and disintegrate, and a gigantic flash of white light exploded around Kaguya and Naruto.